بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone joining us, and good evening around the world. Thank you for joining another episode of Leaders Talk. Today we have Mr. Stuart Harrison. We would like to thank him first for accepting the invitation and joining us today in sharing knowledge and giving guidance to the industry people who really are joining us today and who will listen to this talk later on in our YouTube and podcast. Thank you, Stuart, for joining us. It's really a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, and I'm delighted to be here. It's a privilege to speak with you. So thank you very much for inviting me.
So Leaders Talk, it's all about our industry, the facility management industry. Before we talk about our challenges and the industry success factors, we need first to start talking about you as a steward, your background. How did you start your career in FM? It's important for people to know, because everybody can make it relevant in how did he start and how can he take similar path to what you've already taken, mashallah, and you're today the CEO of Emrill Facility Management. So I'll give the mic to you, and it's all yours to talk about your background, a little bit maybe about Emrill. It will be nice as well.
Okay, so I don't know if you could follow my physical pathway, because I'm an old man now. I'm 51, so FM didn't really exist as we know it back then. It was usually called maintenance, and when something broke, we went and fixed it. So I started my working life after college as an electrical engineer, and that was almost accidental as well. My best friend, his father was an electrical engineer. It looked like a good career to follow, and that's how I got into it. So I kind of wove my way through various different elements of that, in construction at first, and then into manufacturing, and then kind of accidentally into FM. I ended up working for an organization that had quite a lot of property, and I just became the guy that fixed things. And then a little bit later in life, I did qualifications and a master's degree, and started pursuing more senior roles. But that wasn't really until I was in my late 30s.
Yeah, which year? That's very important for us to know the time, and how did you go into FM?
Oh, okay. Well, I left. So I left college. So I left school at 16 in 1989. I left college 2 years later, and I just started on a pathway. You know, the truth is, I just wanted to earn some money and buy a motorcycle. That was fashionable when I was young. So I didn't really take my career terribly seriously until I got a family and kids, and then the reason that I kind of chased a management role was just I always felt that I could do a little bit better, and if I had control of that, I felt that I was able to do a better job. And I think that steered me all the way along. So I think as engineers, we like to have control of things. That's why we develop control systems and better ways of doing things. Clever engineers find ways to make things simple. And I kind of did that with my career. So I was in my late 20s, and I really started to pile on the qualifications. I kind of finished in my late 30s with a master's degree. All done whilst I was working at the same time. In fact, I was talking to one of our guys at work this morning about that, who's considering doing a master's degree, and I said it was a long, hard slog, because you know what it's like working in FM. You're often home late, and then I would spend all night until midnight, going through the books, and I would spend all weekend. But I had a deal that I would finish at 3 o'clock on a Sunday, and then that was family time. So, but yeah, it was hard work. So whereas I think now you can do a degree in FM straight from school. I think getting into the industry, I guess, is much easier, and there's specific pathways that you can do that now. Even later in life, we've got guys that were kind of like me, who went through different pathways, but maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 years old, they did FM qualifications. You could become a certified FM practitioner or a chartered FM manager, and you can enter that way. But it's a lot more specific now, and there's a lot more, it's a lot more tailored.
Yeah, agreed. So after going into a different works, you said you went to a real estate company, and then this is where you started going into an FM. Which year it was? And
Well, they were actually a manufacturing company. So I was in my late 30s. So this would have been like 15 years ago. And I'd already been involved, of course, in maintenance. We used to call it maintenance. So, when I worked for companies, and I worked all over the world, really. I always had a desire to travel. So I worked across Europe and various other places. And it was, but when I started working for a large manufacturing company that had multiple facilities, I then kind of drifted into some new works, but also doing maintenance as well. And that was when we started to get interested in CAFM systems and it used to be logbooks, paper logbooks on a shelf in a file. But we were always interested in why were things breaking down? Why were things repeatedly breaking down? Could we do proactive maintenance or time-based maintenance rather than just waiting for something to break? And that was when I think the industry, I mean, I'm not claiming to be a trailblazer or anything, but that was when the industry was really starting to take shape. And we started looking at how we could tackle things more intelligently. And then, of course, when computer-assisted facilities management systems came along, and we could start to gather data, because that's what all of our work is based on, really. We could start to tackle it much more efficiently rather than just relying on paper-based logbooks on a shelf and people's memories and all that kind of old school experience, which is really good, but it lets you down. And what you need to be able to do is interrogate data, record data, and then even get the CAFM system will tell us when it's time to do something, or when something's not working right.
yeah, I totally agree. And I remember the same days where I used to have everything recorded in papers when I was in Etisalat, when I started in 1997. I remember that. Stuart, to go further, how did you enter into your role as a CEO of Emrill? How did you, was it easy to go to the CEO?
Of course not.
We need more. We need more of that.
If it was easy, there'd be well, there is a lot of CEOs around the world. So
yeah,
I don't, I always try and be humble, but so I don't think I'm anything special. We're all just doing different jobs and we've got different titles, but it just was terribly hard to get where I was. And if I'm honest with you, I never aimed to be a CEO. My ultimate aim in the world was to be a technical director, because as an engineer, that's kind of the pinnacle of where I wanted to be. And when I first came to the Middle East, Emrill stood out as, I thought, the best company. And that was when I didn't work for Emrill. So I'm being honest. And I remember thinking, if I was going to work in the Middle East in engineering, in FM, then I wanted to work for the best company. And I joined Emrill as a technical director. Now, the then MD asked me to, after a few months, asked me to take over the bid team. And I said, boss, I don't know anything about bid, doing bids. I'm an engineer. And he said, no, I've seen your CV. You've got a master's degree in management, so you can do anything. And so I took over the bid team as well. And that was a real learning curve for me. So as well as looking after all the technical side and the new energy business that we started and all that, I also looked after the bid team, which meant that I was in a unique position to bid for things and put the bid together and the solution together, and then support on the back end with all the technical elements, which I don't meet many people to get the chance to do that. So I was in Emrill for 5 years doing that. And then the MD left for a good opportunity. He was offered a role in another business. And after some time, it was a few weeks, I'll be honest with you, after some time, I thought, well, I like Emrill. It's a good company, and I wanted the culture to stay the same, because I thought it was a good culture. I wanted the business to grow, and I thought, well, why not me? If anybody's going to do it, then why not me? So I pitched my interest to the board, who gave me an incredibly hard time. So I had panel interviews and then individual interviews, and they wanted to know my short-term plan, my long-term plan, my goals, what I would do with the business, where I would take it, geographical expansion, everything. And at the end of that process, I was very happy that they appointed me as the CEO, and that was just over 5 years ago now. But like it was incredibly hard to get there. And then I think it's very common in most things that when you reach a point, I think that is reasonably kind of high, it's very hard to stay there, because there's constantly people snapping at your heels. There's new people coming through, really, really clever people. I mean, we work in one of the most dynamic places in the world. You've got iconic buildings like One's At Abil, the Burj Khalifa. These are really iconic places with some very, very clever people managing them. And you have to be dynamic and fluid and innovative to stay where you are. And that's you know, I'm not doing a sales pitch, but I think that's why Emrill stayed where it has at the top, because I've got a brilliant team that all think the same way. So it's hard, but it's rewarding.
I agree 100%. You have to have the right team. So going to the next question, what lesson guidelines can you share with our attendees that you consider as a learning experience throughout your career? What are the 3 most important things you learned and you advise people in the industry to consider?
I think I'm gonna steal a saying from the real estate industry, and I'm gonna change it a little bit. But the 3 most important things are attitude, and attitude.
Okay.
So you've got to approach things with the right attitude. It's got to be a can-do attitude, and you've got to be willing to put the effort in. So I mean, I'm quite fortunate now that you know, I'm my own boss, really. You know, of course I've got a board, but they generally kind of leave me alone to guide the business in the way that I think is the right way. But it wasn't always like that. And so, you know, I've been that guy on a Friday night at 10 o'clock at night, covered in oil, with a client that's unhappy, and everybody else has gone home, and I've been working 18 hours, 20 hours, 24 hours. I mean, even with Emrill, when I was a technical director, I worked round the clock to get the power back on one day in one large facility. So you've got to be willing to put that effort in, and you've got to have the right attitude. So I was always willing to go on any course that came along. Again, I was talking about this to somebody in our business this morning. I was saying, grab all those opportunities. I say the same to my son. He's 20 years old. He's just starting out in his career. Grab any course. I've been on data management courses. I've been on engineering courses, management courses, counseling courses, you know, anything that helped me in my career or knowledge-wise. And I think I mean, from what, 16 to 45, I don't think there was a single year when I wasn't on some sort of postgraduate education course. You know, every year I did something, and then being willing to go anywhere. So I got on in my career because I was always known that I would, you know, at the drop of a hat, you know, my boss would phone me up and say, I need somebody in Panama because there's a power station that's failed and I need somebody. And I would say, yes, no problem. I'll get to the airport. And then I would, you know, I'd be willing, not to the point that I was exploited, but just the guy that was willing to go to places and work long hours. And, you know, unfortunately, that's kind of the way of the world. And I don't expect that of my team. I always want them to go home at a sensible time every evening. You know, I'd like them to leave and go and spend time with their families. I'd like them to have the weekends off where they can. But when it's called for it, when there's a need arises, it's all hands to the pump and you get stuck in. And that's what I think pays dividends. So you become the guy that is you know, positive. I mean, we all like a moan now and then, but you know, in terms of work, it's like, yeah, I can do that. So if my client asks me now, can you do any, you know, my answer is always yes. I'll find a way. It might cost more, or it might mean more effort or whatever, but yeah, there's always a way, and we'll do it. I won't let you down. So I think it's that attitude. You can have all the qualifications in the world, but if you don't, and I meet some of those people, they've got PhDs, but they've got the wrong attitude towards their customer. You've got to be customer orientated. And you've got to be willing and keen and have the right attitude to work. And if you've got that, you'll make it eventually. It might take longer for some people than others, but you will make it eventually if you just have the right attitude.
I agree 100%. The right attitude, as you said, commitment, dedication, you know, changing, what you call it, some challenges, making these, converting these challenges into opportunities for you to learn, opportunity to improve, opportunity to show your client that you're there for them when they need you. But of course, I'm sure you guys are doing this, and everybody, we need to educate our customer that, you know, they need to also appreciate what we do and at the same time be with us in what we're doing for them. So we make sure they are aware of what we are doing and what kind of support we need from them. And I think you guys, this is key for any organization success or any person's success, is engagement and
it is. And talking to your client, but I learned there's a way to do that. So we lost quite a big contract because I said no to something, and I was absolutely right. And I've been proven right that, you know, the answer no was the right answer. But what my answer should have been is, well, maybe we can't do exactly that, but we can do, you know, or yes, we can do something. And that, you know, I learned a big lesson from that. So I can't say where, but there was a very iconic building that you know, we got involved with, and they had a very specific idea of what they wanted to do. And I said, yes, we can do that, no problem. But can I talk to you about some different ways of doing it? And they listened and they adapted. And that was one way that, because I think educating your client, in inverted commas, kind of sounds arrogant. And so I think there's a way to put that across. And I think the answer has to be yes, of course we can do that. But you know, I don't know, can I get you to the moon? Of course I can, but it's going to cost a lot of money and it's going to take time. But how about today? This is what we can do. And let me talk to you about that. So again, that goes back to attitude, because you can be the best engineer in the world, and if your client asks for something that isn't possible today and you just say a flat no, then you're not going to get a great response from that. So, so like I said, you really need to be customer orientated and see it from their perspective.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's not yes or no. There is always a way to explain to the customer and try to make him see you are there to help him to achieve his target. But sometimes it takes time to do it. Sometimes he is not ready. So I 100% agree with your answer. And we've been through similar situation where sometimes the client, he take a decision and you need to be the right advisor for him. If you want to advise him something that he doesn't like, but it is to his own benefits. I agree with you. Sometimes you lose that opportunity, but it's not a straightforward no or yes. You go and get the data, get the risk, come back to him and explain to him the whole situation. And I think he will, this is the way you can help him to take the right decision. And this is exactly what we need to do. And this is how we learn over the years.
I think so, but I mean, you know, thinking about that from running a business perspective, sometimes it is right to say no and walk away. So we are quite choosy with our clients, and again, that's not arrogance, that's experience. And you know, so I've had again, I won't say who, but I had a large organization that asked us to take over their buildings, and when I went and looked personally, I said, look, I don't think it's the right solution for you, because the way that, you know, we're a tier 1 FM operator and you don't need that. What you need is something slightly different, and there's a cheaper way of doing it. And so it was good advice, but I didn't get the job because of it. And I think you maintain your integrity because of that. And then there's also those customers that unfortunately, you know, don't have the same ethos or the same ethics, you know, because we value our people. And so, you know, there's certain places that we might not operate in. So it as a business, you know, operating a business, I have 12,000 people and I have to safeguard their welfare and the future of the company. So I certainly don't want to be the CEO that makes bad decisions and costs people their jobs, because these are real people with mortgages and children in school and things. So, you know, like when you said, is it easy? No, it's terribly difficult. And it's also terribly difficult every single day to maintain, you know, that integrity and those decisions and keep balance, you know, the needs of your customer, the needs of your clients, and also your employees, who are, you know, I think the most important people out there, because they're the people that are out there doing what they do every day. So it's yeah, it's a challenge.
I agree 100%, totally in agreement. And this is where you are having a heavy responsibility in your shoulder. You have families that you need to support and employees. And at the same time, you have to build that transparency culture with your client. And this is what we are doing all the way. So let me go to the next question. So if a person wants to grow in his career in this industry, what does it take? And I know you told us attitude. Attitude is very important. What else he needs to grow in the career?
So what I would say is, you know, again, the same advice that I give to my son, who's 20 years old and he's just starting out in his career, is learn as much as you can, listen, and the people that have been doing this for years, they're the people that you should listen to. You know, I'm not saying they're right about everything, but you know, you've got to sort the wheat from the chaff. But you know, get stuck in and watch what people do, watch how they behave. You know, my son asked me a question years ago, so he's 20 now, but I don't know, when he was maybe 10 or 12 years old, we were walking through the mall And he said, Dad, when you walk forward, everybody moves out of your way, but they don't move out of my way. And why is that? And I thought it was a great question. I was like, because I'm walking with a purpose. I'm moving at a fair pace. I look in front of me. I'm going somewhere with a purpose, and people step aside. And so, yeah, it's incumbent upon people that have been in the business for a while, to teach young people how to operate. And that's, again, attitude. It's about learning. It's about watching how somebody manages a client or manages a crisis, and then and then I guess mirroring that or learning from it how not to do it. But I mean, if you've got attitude, it's a really hard question to answer, because to distill in a jar, if you like, of how to be successful in your career. But if you've got the right attitude and you're willing to learn and you're willing to watch and listen and ask the right questions and not be afraid to make mistakes, then you can't fail. Eventually you'll get there. You can't not succeed if you just keep doing that. And tenacity, just keep plugging away. Don't accept I'm the kind of person that if I put a shelf up and it's not quite perfectly level, I can't leave it. I won't sleep at night. So don't accept second best from yourself, because you'll let yourself down. So it's important to hold yourself to high standards, and then, like I said, listen and learn.
Yeah, I agree. I think these are great advices for our attendees today, and for the people who joins the FM industry.
And can I add, sorry, don't
Please.
expect too much too early. So
yes.
one of the things that I find, so a lot of people come to Dubai because it's a fantastic place. It really is. I raised my family here, and I'm very, very happy. But it also does have a very kind of flashy reputation, and I think some people come here and they expect within a year they're going to be driving around in a Ferrari, and the roads are going to be paved with gold. Now that is, the potential is there, but you've got to put the legwork in. I'm 50 years old, and okay, now I'm in a comfortable situation. I was able to put my kids through school, but it took me 30 years to get here. And you have to accept, I think kids these days, or young people, they see Instagram lifestyles. I'm not going to have a moan and a rant, but they see these things and they expect that by 21, 22, that they're all going to be driving around in very expensive cars. They're going to have top YouTube jobs or whatever. And that's less than 1%, So if you're an entrepreneur and you're capable of that, then great, then go and get it. But for the rest of us, we have to work hard. And that means getting in at the beginning. And again, this is what I told my son. You start at the beginning, work your way up. Don't be afraid to, take some time to get there. Don't expect, results yesterday. So you've got to have tenacity, patience. And I think probably, your 20s and your early 30s are probably the most demanding years, because that's when you have to put all of the effort in to build the foundations for your later career. So I think, be willing to put the effort in.
I agree 100%. We have some expert people join us. They know themselves. I'm not going to mention their name. And they say customer centricity and communication skills. We totally agree. But how to develop the communication skills? It takes time, and you need to put efforts in, because if you just try to work alone and try to depend on yourself without communicating to people lower than you and people higher than you and even your client, you're not going to develop this communication skills. What do you think, Stuart? How to develop communication skills?
Well, again, I was talking about this morning. So in my master's, my dissertation, I learned something very important. So there was I won't go into the detail. In fact, I think I wrote something about this and put it on LinkedIn. There's a thing called the RATAR model. It's RATAR, and it stands for certain things. And there's things like reliability, tangibles, and so assurance. And so what I try and do is I follow that model with my customers. So I say, look, here's my phone number. You can phone me at 2 o'clock in the morning. I promise I'll answer and I'll help you. And I do that, and people will tell you that. And give them the assurance that no matter what their problem is, you're going to be standing alongside them. Now, I don't know if I can fix it in the first 10 minutes, but I won't leave them until it is fixed, and I'll be there on site. So, where we've had unfortunate incidents, it's not unusual to find me at 2 o'clock in the morning on a site, and certainly all my senior managers will be there. Tangibles is, are your people turning up with, or do they look professional? Have they got good tools? Are they sufficiently trained and educated? Reliability. Will you do what you say when you said you would? And if you don't, then you let people down, and then they lose it. They lose I guess, faith in you. If you look at a lot of the Google reviews, it's people that you've interacted with and you've somehow let them down. Now, maybe that's because you didn't give them a quote on time, or maybe you did a job and it wasn't done to the best of our ability or something like that. And I'm always following those up. So again, it's not unusual if you're my client, even if you're an M+ client and we fix a dripping tap, I might call you personally or turn up at your house to find out how we did, and listening to that customer feedback. And I think it's just trust. And like I said, one of the things that I always say, and I think everybody should say this. I don't think it should just, just be me, but if I go and you give me a project, like I said, you can phone me, you can phone my COO, you can phone the CFO, you can phone us in the middle of the night. If you've got a problem, it's our problem, because as you said before, we both want the same things. So if we look after your building, I want your building to be operational and work perfectly, and you want the same thing. So if that stops happening, we'll just pull out all the stops. And somebody told me some time ago, the difference with us and other people is that when we have a problem, and sometimes we do, all our senior management, including the COO and the CFO, and we all turn up on site until the problem's resolved. So I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I 100%. That shows commitment, not just to customer, even to your employees. Employees self-confident that we have everybody supporting us. Especially, I think these days the buzz is rain. When it rains, we're not going to be sitting in our offices as leaders, as you said. We need to be there with our employees. We need to communicate with them. We need to help them planning. We need to communicate with the customer, saying there is a limit to rain management. We cannot guarantee.
And as a CEO, you've got to, again, find a balance with that. Because when I was a director, an operational director, the last thing I wanted was my CEO on site all day, because you want to get on with your day. So when I go on site, things stop. Everybody kind of wants some time to talk to me, or, and so I'm very conscious of that as well. And my guys are very, very good at what they do. Everybody knows that. We've got a great reputation. So I try and stay out of their way if I can. So I have to manage that balance. So I think there's an important balance between being seen on site and getting out. And I remember one evening we were doing some generator work, and one of the senior electrical guys was there, and I went and stayed with him while it happened. And he said, thanks, I didn't expect that. But there's, like I said, there's a line with that. So the last thing you really want is your senior management walking around site and interrupting the daily routine of things. And I don't need to do that. If I go to site, I'm generally just turning up to say hello, meet a client, or whatever. I rarely go to look at issues in the workforce, because the guys are great.
Yeah, great. I think we'll go a little bit toward FM manager who represent the client. We have a lot of discussion around the FM manager being a service provider, but I think an FM manager in the client side, what is the key for his success? How can he prove, or how can he not just do management of service provider, do strategic role for his client? What is really the difference between an FM manager sitting in an FM company and FM manager sitting in the client side? I think it's different question, but I think the guys maybe have this in mind, because we have two different career paths: being an FM manager in an FM company, or being an FM manager for a big projects or big organization. What do you think, Stuart?
Well, this is a source of frustration for me sometimes, because I don't really see a difference, if I'm honest. If I went to be the FM manager in the building somewhere, I want exactly the same as what I want now, as on the client, on the service provider side. I want the building to work properly. Now, what I find is that sometimes, I can think of instances where we had people on the client side that they thought they'd succeeded if we lost money, because they thought they'd save money if we lost money, and that's the wrong attitude, because everybody loses then. I remember, again, I won't mention names, but I remember talking to a very senior person of a very iconic building, and he said, the problem is, Stuart, in this industry, people cut corners, and those people that aren't willing to cut corners will lose out, because, procurement think they're doing a great job if they drive you down to the absolute bottom price. The FM manager, I'm not everybody, I'm just saying sometimes, the FM manager, he thinks he's doing a great job if he's somehow got you to do work for free, or where it's cost the service provider and he hasn't had to pay. And it's the wrong attitude. You know, everything's got a price, and we don't look to make a lot of money. You know yourself, the margins aren't big in FM. We just look to make a fair amount of money so we can pay our people and you know, pay a dividend. And so if I was on the client side, which has been infrequent, but if I was on the client side, the first thing that I would want to do is, you know, establish a great relationship with the service provider, talk to them about what I need and what I want, help them to give me what I need and what I want, and then I look good. So, you know, if there's no problems with the building. But like I said, too often I feel that turns into conflict, because either if you don't give them the assurance that they're not being cheated, they may feel that way. And they also may, like I said, they may feel that if they somehow save a lot of money out of their budget at the end of the year, that they've succeeded. And that's not success. It's cutting corners, because it means that somebody's not paid for something somewhere. And, you know, your service provider will then either cut corners or walk away from you. So, you know, one of the key things that I find about iconic buildings with people that understand FM is they're happy to pay for a tier 1 service, and they get a great service, and their building will still be there in 100 years.
I 100% agree with you, and I've been into the different roles, but this is where I think we need even to pass this information to our FM manager who sits in the client side, because it's not about you monitor the service provider. It's about you and the service provider work on the strategic initiative, not just day-to-day cleaning and day-to-day maintenance. That is something that's going to be done. But how can I help my organization tap into the possibilities and capability of the service provider, and his success is my success. If I replace a service provider, I fail because I did not do my job. I just said, it's not my problem, it's a service provider problem. He didn't do a good job, let me get another one. But it's
it makes you look bad. And I also don't believe that a competitive tender, and certainly not any kind of e-auction type thing, I don't think that's the best way forward either. If I was on the client side, I would pick a strategic partner based on reputation and relationship, and then I would work towards the best efficient model that I could. And that means sitting with the service provider and saying, okay, you're my service provider of choice. We are going to work together. You know, let's look at our building. Let's look at our assets. Let's look at how we can maintain them in the best possible way, to the most efficient way. And like I said, you know, the FM companies, that we're not greedy. We don't want big margins. We're not automotive. We're not garment industry. We're not looking for double figures. We're looking for fairly low figures in margin. And I believe that's the best way forward. And I think we go through cycles. You know, I saw it in Europe and in the States, and I think we're going through it now, where I think kind of procurement rules the day. And pricing is obviously very sensitive. And so they think that the best option is to do a competitive tender and pick often the lowest price service provider. And I don't think that's the best way to ensure longevity of a building.
I agree. I don't want to take it to another industry discussion, but I fully agree. And I brought this because I think the career path for FM manager who represent clients will grow if they understand their strategic role rather than their just performance management of the service provider. They do more of the bridge between the supply and demand. And this is what is missing in the industry. We have few, I have to be fair, few customers who does that when they work with the service provider. They treat them like their own staff, and that is very important. They make them sit in their office and they work with them to solve these challenges, and they create this rules that will help FM company to do a better job and you know, try to strike a balance between supply and demand. And maybe we have to introduce a course about FM manager for client representative, because I think they have to understand their role better. And if they do that, I think they need the same skills as you said. They need attitude, they need communication skill, but they work on building the right you know, strategy with the FM provider to benefit their organization. Unfortunately, Stuart, it's not just procurement. I had an experience with an organization. They say, no, the audit says to us, if you don't penalize your service provider, then you're not doing your job. So the audit even is involved in evaluating service provider, which is completely wrong.
As I said, I saw this. So when I was working in the UK, people started running courses how to make your service provider pay. And it was all about penalizing. So what they were doing was they were contributing to their bottom line by penalizing the service provider. And again, it was confrontational, and it was just never gonna provide a good relationship. So again, all it does is encourage people to cut corners and try and save money and cost. And I just don't believe if I, you know, I mean, if you buy a car and you intend on keeping it, you know, for 20 years, then of course you're happy to pay for maintenance over that 20-year period. You know, again, it's part of it is, I guess, the transient nature of somewhere where there's a lot of expats. We move around. I don't particularly, you know, I've worked at Emrill for 10 years. So, you know, if you talk to me today, and I don't intend on going anywhere either. So if you talk to me about a contract today, you'll still be talking to me in 5 years, hopefully as the CEO of Emrill. But a lot of people move around. So you'll see people kind of here, there, and everywhere. And that doesn't, again, encourage people to have long horizons and think about the decisions they made today and how it'll affect them in 10 years. I mean, think about your children. So obviously most people that I've ever met invest in their children's future. They get them the best education that they can.
Yes.
You know, and you've got to apply that really to a lot of things, and buildings is one of them. So, you know, imagine having children and saying, oh, you know, I'm going to choose the cheapest education that I can find. I'm not going to put any effort in, and then still expect the same results at the end of it. And it's just the same with a building. If you go cheap on maintenance or FM, if you don't want to pay and you want to cut corners, you're going to have a building that falls over in 25 years. You know, maybe not physically from the building envelope, but certainly in terms of chillers and electrical distribution systems and you know, all that kind of stuff.
Great, thank you. So our next question, I know we've talked about success factor and how to grow in the industry, but the key to these success factor, are they changing these days? You know, I know attitude is very important. As you said, learning is an important thing, but anything else that we need to know to grow? Because if I am a manager today, how can I become a CEO in 10 years? Can I draw my career path? What are the key to my success to grow in this industry?
Definitely. I think you know, I'm 51 years old. Sorry, I was kind of very old school. So I remember, you know, if I was 5 minutes late for work, I would get in trouble when I was a young man. And so when I was at first at Emrill, I was a real stickler for that. You know, you had to turn up clean shaven. You had to be 5 minutes before. You know, if you weren't at your desk or at your place of work at the point you were supposed to be, you know, I used to get quite upset about that. And I've watched the world evolve in the last 10 years. And people are approaching things smarter now. We've got intelligent systems. We've got AI coming online. We've got CAFM systems that are so much better than they were when I was a young man. And so people are more intelligent now. So, you know, I always kind of say, if you're able to, I don't mind where you work from. If you can work remotely and you can do your job remotely, I'm happy with that. I don't care what you dress in. You know, I used to turn up to work in a 3-piece suit every day, and I don't do that anymore. And I'm looking for people who are smart. I'm not looking for people who just turn up like drones and work 15 hours a day and don't ask questions and don't think smartly. I want people that come in and challenge the status quo. They ask questions. They say, why are we doing it like this? There are better ways of working. Because I'm 51, and some of these guys that are coming through now, these young guys in their 20s or you know, at any age, I guess, they've got some great ideas. And if you listen to them, they can really help your business. So I think the attitude of the workforce is certainly changing. People are less afraid to challenge, you know, authority. Not everything now is yes, sir. There's people that are, like I said, they're challenging the way we do things. They're asking questions. They're saying, why are we doing it this way? There's better ways of doing it. And I think as leaders, it's important that we listen to them and that we decide what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. We've had some fantastic people that have worked for us. We've had technicians that have come up with amazing inventions that have saved us time and effort and money. And we do awards for that now. And I'm sure most companies have kind of cottoned onto that. But, you know, tomorrow morning, I've got a Lean Six Sigma award ceremony where these guys all did projects that, you know, it's usually aimed at saving money because that's a really easy way at measuring things, but it's not necessarily about saving money. It's about doing things better. And that's what I encourage. So, you know, it's like, you've seen the Rocky speech. I can't remember which Rocky it is, where he's talking to his son and he tells him, Luke, you know, don't complain. If you've got great ideas, if you think you're worth more, then go out and get it. And that's the people we want in Emrill. We want people that, you know, maybe they're just at the beginning of their career or they're at a point. I always tell my guys, if you're looking for, let's say, an FM, you know, a manager, pick the guy that's going to be a CEO in 10 years' time, because you'll get him as an FM and you might only keep him for 2 or 3 years, but that'll be the best 2 or 3 years that you'll ever get with somebody. Don't pick the guy who wants to be an FM for the rest of his life because he's plodding along. You know, pick the guy because, you know, it's a safe option and he's going to be there for 10 years and it's less work for you. But pick the guy who's on a career trajectory, you know, pick the guy that's aiming high. And you might, like I said, you might only get them for a few years, until they move on, and hopefully they move on inside your organization. So, you know, my CEO started at Emrill, sorry, COO started at Emrill 22 years ago, and he's now the COO, you know, the Chief Operations Officer. That guy was brilliant at every, Gopal, I'm sure most of you know him. That guy was very, very good at every job that he did in Emrill. And that, you know, that's the guy that I'm looking for. The guy that, you know, Gopal at one point was an FM. He was a senior FM, and then he was, you know, then he was a general manager, then he was an operations director, and now he's the COO. And at every point, he was very good at what he did. But I could only keep him in those roles for maybe 2 or 3 years, and then I had to reward him and promote him. But those are the people that I want.
I agree 100%. I have many stories of people started on 800 dirham salaries in Dubai as a cleaner, and they are 35, 40,000. They learn, they change, they ask.
I rarely meet anybody in Emrill that is in the job that they started at. So, you know, exactly. I joined as the technical director. I'm now the CEO. You know, I've got, and I'm one of the youngest. I've been there 10 years. Most people have been there longer than me. So it's a company, you know, again, I'm not doing a sales pitch, but it's a company that we really reward, you know, talent and innovation and ideas. And that's what we're looking for. And that's, you know, you asked me the question, you know, I talked about attitude, tenacity, being willing to learn, being willing to put the hours in, but also be willing to ask the questions and challenge and, you know, in the right way. And you know, promote yourself and push forward, because that's what gets you, you know, I guess that's what gets you to be you know, in a senior role.
100%, a huge effort. I can see the effort put to create the culture, because culture cannot be created in one day. It's a huge effort and commitment from top management to engage with your customers, to engage with your employees, and make it like, you know, an engagement platform where we all collaborate to achieve one goal and one objective. And this is leadership, different than management. A manager today, he is just there for the time he's at work, and he goes home and he says, thank you very much, don't call me. If you have a problem, solve it yourself. And unfortunately, I heard the stories of many guys who are director and say, please don't call me after working hours, solve your own problem. And unfortunately, maybe he has the right to do that, but he's not a leader, he's a manager, and his employee will not respect him and will not stand up for him. So
I don't think you'd last very long as an FM director if you turn your phone off at 5 o'clock. I mean, I think it's great if you can, you know, I really do. I mean, there's a guy that works in my HR department, and if I'm in the office late, he's always there, and he always comes in early. And the other day I went over to him and I said, look, you can't do both. You can't come in early and leave late. You know, come in early and leave early, or come in late and leave. But I don't want you in the office like 14 hours a day. I don't want that, you know. Is it because you've got too much work to do? And he said, no, you know, it's just a cool place to be, and I'm happy working. And I'm like, okay, you do what you want, but I don't want that really. However, like I said earlier on in the interview, sometimes you have to do that. So sometimes, you know, at 9 o'clock at night, you have to go to work, and sometimes at midnight you're still there, and sometimes you're still there the next morning. That's just the way it is. And we didn't choose a glamorous industry, you know. As FM people, we hopefully disappear into the background because you don't notice us. If you go into a building and the air conditioning's at the right temperature and the lighting's working, it's a safe and pleasant environment to be in, then why would you notice us? You wouldn't, because it means we've done our job well. You only tend to notice us when something's gone wrong, and then you need the FM people in. So it's not a glamorous industry. You're unlikely to make the cover of magazines, although sometimes we do, I guess, you know, but you're unlikely to even get thanks. You know, you get paid and you get your own self-satisfaction from knowing that you've done a good job. And again, when I talk to, we go to the subcontinent, and we might take 40 graduate engineers from university, and I say, please, you're young people, and be aware that you're not coming into a glamorous industry. All the opportunities are there. You can have all the glamour you want. If you want riches, then they're there for the taking. But don't think you're coming into a glamorous industry, because you'll often be in the back office. You'll often be behind the scenes. You'll often be working away, and you won't get gratitude for it, because people don't. If you walk into the mall tomorrow and the temperature's great, and you go and do your shopping, you don't really think about the FM people, and that's how it should be. We should be invisible, and you only notice us when something's gone wrong.
Well, it's changing, Stuart, because we would like people to say thank you to us, and we would like, this is what you're doing. You're saying thank you to the guy who comes early and goes late, by asking about his health, asking about him, not to do that for a long period because you care about him. And caring about people is saying thank you to them. And we can see a lot of customers, at least once a year, they try to appreciate everybody works with them. And I can see even client you know, they appreciate even the cleaner and the tea boy working in their offices because they appreciate what they do. So I think the thank you culture is important for us to spread it and
Definitely
be proud of it.
within the company for sure, but not always from the client because you're providing a service. So definitely, and you kind of you know you kind of touched on the subject of stress and mental health and things. So I've certainly, you know, I mentioned to you before, I've got 12,000 people, and they're real people, real human beings with lives and mortgages and children in school and, you know, food to put on the table, and you know, the weight of their future does weigh heavily on me. And I understand stress. I never used to, but I understand what stress is now, and I understand a little bit more about mental health. So again, we're all human beings, and no matter what role you play in any organization, you deserve to be, you know, given that respect. So again, you know, if somebody comes to me and says, boss, I'm feeling burnt out and I need 2 weeks to go and kind of, you know, convalesce or whatever, then you'll get it, because it's about time we recognize that we're human beings, we're not machines. And you get the best out of people when you recognize that and you give them the time to kind of ebb and flow, and, you know, rather than just flog them to death. It's the wrong.
Stewart, why they ask you? Because they know you're gonna prove it. If they don't know you, they will never come to you because you're a leader, you're not a manager. They came to you and they express their challenges. And this is what we need to do to our customer. Sometimes we go to a tough customer and say thank you to him. And he gets
You know,
why he's thanking me? I'm thanking you, so you thank me for what I do. You know, at some time you thank him for his support of me, you doing your job, but it's a message to him that you need to appreciate my guys sitting on your side and serving you. They're serving you, even if they're getting
we do often get that. Yeah, we do often get recognition, and that's why I like the awards, and that's why I try and not go and send the junior guys, because they deserve it. You know, I've been fortunate, and you know, to receive some great awards. But yeah, I think it's important to recognize that people are people and we're not infallible and we make mistakes, and you know, it's important to do that. And I talked before about learning lessons, and so I learned that lesson from a great guy that used to be my director. And one day he came into the office, and I was at kind of director level of a huge organization. And I said to him, I'm so stressed, you know, I'm really, I don't know how long I can keep doing this. You know, I'm working long hours. I'm doing minimum 12 hours a day. I'm often in 7 days a week. I'm finding it really hard to maintain this level of performance. And he just talked to me and basically said, I understand the pressure that you're under, and I get it. You know, I was in your position once, it won't be forever. And at the end of it, he said, how do you feel now? And I felt so much better just because I learned that he understood me. And so after that, I didn't need any time off. I just felt better that somebody understood where I was at. And so I try and do that with my guys as well. You know, I always say to them, I recognize how hard you work, and I recognize the effort that you put in and the amount of stress that you take, because I've been there, and I get that. And hopefully if people recognize that, so you talk about recognition, and I think that's a form of recognition, you know, and acceptance, and people feel that they don't have to, you know, pretend to be perfect or pretend to be 100% all the time. They get a bit of a break now and then.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we have one person who wrote a message: working in FM is like being an invisible army. You don't see us, but we take care of everything. And you should be proud of what you're doing. You should, you know, I always go to a site and I say to the guy, how many generators do you have? Oh, I don't know. I said, man, you need to know everything about your facility that you're taking care of. This gives you credibility in front of your customer, because if you ask a question, you can answer immediately. And this is how proud you should be, because you know everything about this building and you are actually the doctor for the building. And this is how, you know, people improve and grow and get the trust of the client and get the trust of their higher management. And I know you're invisible, but you can be always visible if you know everything about what you...
Well, and that's why it's a tough business. It's certainly a tough business if you take pride in what you do. So I mentioned before about working 7 days a week and 12 hours. And I remember getting a phone call one Sunday morning about 6 o'clock in the morning and saying, boss, we've got a problem, but we're dealing with it. And I said, right, I'll jump in the car. And they said, no, you don't need to. And I said, no, but I'm coming anyway. And it was just that pride in what I was doing and wanting to check that things were done right. And, you know, so I chose to put myself under that kind of pressure. It wasn't necessarily directed by the business. But you're right. And that's why it's a very, very hard job, because if you're running a facility You have to know it inside out. You have to know who your guys that are working for you are. You have to know their strengths and weaknesses and what they're capable of. And you have to employ the right people and maintain the right relationships with them. And it's a massive balancing act. You know, it's a big plate spinning exercise. But if you can do it, then, you know, you'll get on great, I guess. You know, you may have some stress along the way, but that's what's important, is taking ownership and being responsible. And then hopefully, you know, as a leader, I'm able to instill that into people and give them the room to do that, you know, and not micromanage.
Great, great. I think we're almost there in 1 hour, but we have few minutes to go. Let's talk a little bit about the leadership quality that we need in our FM teams. Not, we've talked about attitude, but what else we need in our as a leadership quality in our team, FM team? If you hire an FM manager, what do you expect from him to be hired? What qualities do you expect?
I can't remember whether it was Richard Branson or Steve Jobs. Somebody said, hire great people and then get out of their way. And that's what I believe in. So I remember, you know, everybody's got a different style, but, you know, a previous MD that I knew was a micromanager, a very, very clever guy, but he wanted to know every little detail and he told everybody exactly what to do. And so when I found myself in the same position and I sat down with people and they said, okay, here's my budget and it's, I don't know, say 10 million. What should I do with it? And I was like, well, what do you think you should do with it? And they were like, well, I don't know. Nobody's ever asked me before. You know, I always got told how to spend my budget and what to do. And I was like, well, I'm going to give you my vision. So my vision is that, you know, at the end of the year, this will be where we're at. And then you find a way to reach that vision. And it was hard work at first because people that are used to being micromanaged, they sometimes find it a little bit insecure. But once you get them used to that and they realize that they can make mistakes and they're not going to get fired for it, as long as it's not outrageous and dreadful.
Yeah.
You know, but and then you really see them flourish. So you really see their ideas come forward and you see them getting smart at what they do and clever and innovative. And then you can step back and just watch them. And then all I do is that, you know, on a one-to-one, I might bring them in and I might talk for 2 hours about my vision and my thoughts and my ideas. And they scribble notes and then they go off and then they make it, you know, make things happen. And that's the way it should be, rather than, you know, if you micromanage, you're only ever going to be as good as one person. You know, if you've got 10 direct reports, then I'm as good as 10 people if I give them the freedom to do it. And it suits me as well because I'm not a micromanager. I kind of, you know, you might have guessed, I like talking. I like talking about ideas and visions and things like that, and then give people the space to create that, and that works.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. And I think this is what we need in the industry. People who will help other people to grow, guide them rather than, you know, give them all the instruction. People need guidance. Sometimes they need mentorship, but they don't need to be traced and, you know, being followed and being you know, like just follow my instruction. And I think the army concept is important to have discipline, but it's important to create this engagement from the employees and get them out there thinking about solutions that help us to do better, solutions that will help us to make our customer happy and improve ourselves. And
yeah, get them to create their own discipline, because otherwise,
exactly,
as soon as you turn your back, they're going to goof around. So get them to, you know, create their own kind of direction and stuff. I mean, I always thought that the best project managers looked like they didn't do anything, but of course they did, because if they weren't there, the whole thing would fall over. So I think the best leaders, you know, in fact, if people talk about me and they say, you know what, he comes into the office, he kind of talks, and then he goes, and you know, that for me is perfect, because if I look like I don't do anything, but the business runs brilliantly, then that means I've been an absolute success, because I've put the right people in the right places, I've given them the space and the guidance and the vision. And then they've succeeded, and it looks like I don't do anything. And that I think that's the perfect leadership style. If the leader is the one making all the decisions and being the controlling one, then I think you failed, because like you said before, you're just a manager. You turn up between a certain amount of hours and you make decisions, and that's a manager. That's not a leader. You know, I think the greatest leaders in the world, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, it's a fine line between not doing anything and being seen not to do anything. But, you know, I think it's just giving people that space.
I agree 100%. It's, you know, you become passionate about what you do, but at the same time, you are not in the steering wheel. You keep other people driving and you watch them. And
But I tell you, a good thing is if you know, somebody might think, oh, he doesn't do anything, but then when you go on vacation and you come back, there's a great big list of things that they want you to do, and it's what you actually do. But while you're there, they think, well, he doesn't do anything, you know. But if you take 2 weeks off, you come back to a huge list of things. Oh, can you take care of this, and can you do that, and can you, you know? But whilst you're just flowing and working, then you know it just looks like you're just going with the flow.
Agreed, 100%. 3 minutes to go. You want to say anything before we end up this session to our attendees and the industry in general about, you know, tips to grow, challenges in the industry that, or what is the vision, or what is the future of the industry? Maybe a key message that you would.
Well, I think the best thing I could say, and I said this is a lesson that I learned very, very hard, is the answer should always be yes, and I'll find a way. So, you know, if your client wants something, the answer is sure. You know, I'll find a way to do that, but let's, you know, so I'll find a way to do that going forward. But let's talk about what we can do today and what we can achieve today. And I think if you always answer in the affirmative, you know, you're always saying, yeah, of course, anything. I mean, literally anything is possible these days. You know, we can do incredible things now. You know, and then you get into that conversation rather than saying, well, I can't do that today, it's impossible. You know, it's a kind of negative way of thinking about it. So, you know, as an engineer, I was often the guy that went, no, I can't do that. It's not capable. We're not able to do that today, maybe in 6 months or something. And I learned not to do that because it's not a very positive way of talking to your clients. Sometimes there's got to be you know, some element of pushback, but you know, I think in the FM industry and being customer centric and it is always kind of thinking about what they want and what they, you know, well, what they want and what they need might be two different things, but you've got to try to satisfy both.
100%. We have enjoyed 1 hour of talk, and I'm sure the attendees all are saying thank you to you, Mr. Stuart Harrison, for joining us. And it's a pleasure having you in Leaders Talk. And please, we would like to thank you for being part of Leaders Talk and being an active part of the industry. Emrill is always there to support the FM industry and support incomers to the FM industry. Thank you again for joining Leaders Talk. Have a great day. And thank you all for joining us today, and wish you all the best, and see you very soon in another Leaders Talk. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.